Just a note, you're muted and we can't hear you, we can't see you. But if you have questions throughout the presentation, make sure you just, at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A box function. Just click on that, type your question in there, and our staff will do our best to make sure at the end of the program, we're gonna bring those questions to the presenters. If we don't get to all the questions today, we're gonna do our best to get them in our future publications. So our presenters today, they're two new friends to WPA. We just got to know them over the past couple months from the Brain Center of Green Bay. Dr. Rolf Lulloff is a retired orthopedic surgeon. He graduated from the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine in 1967, completed his internship at the Utah Medical Center. Then in 1972, completed his residency at the Wisconsin Medical Center in Madison. In 1974, Dr. Lulloff joined Westside Clinic in Green Bay, which in 1995 became Previa Health. He continued his practice until 2017, when he co-founded the Brain Center of Green Bay. He currently serves as the organization's board president and lead volunteer coach. And he'll be joined by Vanden Hoogen, I'm sorry, Christine Vanden Hoogen serves as the executive director of the Brain Center of Green Bay. Over her 19-year career, she specialized in serving and growing nonprofit organizations of Northeastern Wisconsin. She has a degree in journalism with public relations emphasis. Her experiences include nonprofit management, fund development, and program development. Chris is a Green Bay native and currently resides there with her husband and two children. Welcome, Dr. Lulloff and Christine.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to do the screen share now. Is that the appropriate time, Jeremy?
Yes.
Well, as we get that going, I'm just going to say thank you, Gary, so much for that complimentary introduction. We're grateful to be with you all this morning. And it's so exciting to know that participants are joining from both all over the state and beyond. Dr. Lulloff and I come to you this morning from the Brain Center of Green Bay. The Brain Center is a nonprofit, high-impact organization that's committed to making brains better. We do this by collaborating with wonderful, mission-rich organizations like the Wisconsin Parkinson's Association. We're a local resource, but we have statewide and regional partnerships. We advocate for those that are impacted with brain disease and challenged with brain conditions, seeking understanding, awareness, and support. We promote research and the advancement of science and search for cures and really finding a better way. And we educate, like the Wisconsin Parkinson's Association. That's a big part of our mission. We want to equip people of all ages and across all generations with information and education that we can all use to best maximize our brains throughout life. So we just want to highlight that we are not here as your doctors today, and that all major healthcare decisions should be discussed with your personal care team. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rolf Lulloff for today's presentation on loving your brain and maximizing your health.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everybody from the Wisconsin Parkinson's Association. It's an honor to be here with you. I'm a Wisconsin kid and very proud of all the Wisconsin connections. In addition to my medical background, I'm involved in the Brain Center because I have a strong family history of Alzheimer's disease. And for 52 and a half years, I was married to a wonderful lady who, it turned out, had Parkinson's disease for more than 44 years. And Anne taught me so much about Parkinson's disease and neurological diseases, and about the ability of how you live and how it can make a difference. Also because I was an orthopedic surgeon and did many hip and knee replacements and took care of many fractures and things like that, that I was always impressed that the brain determined how well those people did. If the brain was working well, the bones and joints became a minor problem. And then observing the expertise of great athletes. Aaron Rodgers is in the headlines all the time, but his brain certainly works well as far as putting a football in the hands of somebody and leading a football team. Hopefully that'll get worked out. So today we're going to talk about neuroplasticity in our amazing brain and how we can help deal with normal health and aging and with neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's and other related diseases. And in my personal experiences, as she taught me so much in how to deal with the challenges of Parkinson's. Because the challenges of Parkinson's disease in many ways are the challenges of aging. And how we take care of our brains will determine to a large degree how we handle aging and achieve, hopefully, a good longevity and a high quality of life. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to reorganize its operation. It's a process underlying all learning, training, and rehabilitation. But the interesting thing is that our brains function a lot automatically. A lot of our bad habits are because of not taking control of our brains. Let's teach our brains to do things right and not to do things wrong. And you're going to hear how we applied that, Anne and me, to her Parkinson's disease. Examples of neuroplasticity. You know, when 9 months before all of us were born, when that one sperm and one egg got together, it was just one cell. Can you believe that 9 months later, when we were born, there was a substantial brain already? That brain is sort of like a warehouse with empty shelves when that child is born. And what happens? That child learns to open its mouth and drink mother's milk. And it learns that it likes being cuddled. And it learns, I like my thumb in my mouth. And gradually it learns more and more. And those empty shelves are being filled with all sorts of memories and training. And that's neuroplasticity. Normal child development, learning a language, learning to walk, learning a sport, learning to play the piano, and indeed learning to learn. When we are young, the ability of the brain to learn is amazing. It has high ability and high potential. As we get older, it's tough, and it can be very tough. If you think about the first time I got off an airplane in Paris with Anne, I knew about 5 French words. Do you think I could learn much French when I was there? No. If you take a child and you have them exposed to both Spanish and English early in life, they are bilingual. Did they have to study a book with that? No. Their brains took care of that teaching. So neuroplasticity applies in health, but it especially applies also in dealing with injury, illness, degenerative changes like Parkinson's. What is Parkinson's? It's a progressive neurodegenerative disease involving many areas of the brain and other areas of the nervous system throughout the body. And the classic symptoms are motor impairment that we'll talk about. But there are many other neurological symptoms that appear often very early in Parkinson's long before there are tremors and the motor symptoms. The motor symptoms are the shakiness, the tremors, rigidity, a stiffness in movement, bradykinesias, which is a slowness of movement, and poor balance, which unfortunately results often in falling and injuries. There's later loss in the fine motor control with the hands, especially in trying to take a spoon full of cereal, get the cereal on the spoon, get it to your mouth, put it into your mouth, and then to swallow it. There's early sensory loss, difficulty with smelling, with tasting, with position sense, and with seeing. And there's early gastrointestinal dysfunction, constipation, very common early on. And then there are later chewing and swallowing difficulties, urinary control problems. And then the brain itself is not motivated to keep moving as much as we often would like to. And our thinking suffers. Executive function. Took me a couple years to learn what executive function really meant with Parkinson's. It's taking the information, identifying it as a problem and what you can do about it, figuring how to do it, and operating to make that happen. And then memory suffers, judgment suffers, apathy, and fatigue. And then there's depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and then something that Anne taught me, not because she wanted to teach it to me, autonomic nervous dysfunction, postural hypotension with falling or losing consciousness and fainting. And on occasion, what was we figured out, and lo and behold, it's real, but it's not commonly talked about, supine, lying down, hypertension, where Anne was literally unresponsive. We thought she had a stroke on a couple of occasions. We could not arouse her because her blood pressure happened to be 220 over 105. And she'd never had high blood pressure. So the classic symptoms we've talked about already. Now we're going to talk about our challenging journey with Parkinson's. And Anne always gave me permission to talk about her and use her name. She was a wonderful teacher to me. At age 36, she abruptly lost her sense of smell. We saw a good ear, nose, and throat doctor. He checked her over. He said, "I can't find anything. It's neurologic." She had a CT scan of her brain and saw a neurologist. He couldn't find anything. And the CT scan didn't show any significant abnormalities. But over the next few years, in addition to having lost her sense of smell, she had panic attacks and she had visual problems. She had trouble focusing with her eyes. She had a thorough ear, nose, and throat or eye evaluation. They could not find anything. And then in the 1980s, she developed all sorts of sort of weird musculoskeletal pain like bursitis. And finally, she developed the motor symptoms, the tremors, the difficulty writing, the classic symptoms, and the diagnosis was made in 1989. So hey, that's 32 years ago. She had mood disorders. She had the cognitive impairment. Next. In the 1990s, we used medication. It helped the symptoms. It doesn't change the disease. And then you get into the side effects of the medicine. They're early, they're effective. Later on, they only help with symptoms, and they don't create the causes. Or don't treat the causes of the Parkinson's, and they become variable as far as how responsive the body is to it and the side effects, which are a real nuisance as time goes on. Starting in about 2000, she had poor judgment and she had poor balance. That's a bad combination because she would go ahead and do things that most of us would say, I don't want to do that because that's dangerous for me. Next. And when we least expected it, she would start to fall. From 6 years ago to 11 years ago, the first fall, 3 broken ribs. The second fall, she fell and broke her hip, requiring surgery. The third fall, which I learned a huge lesson. It was a June morning. We were walking out. She wanted to go look at the flowers down in the front yard. We're walking down the driveway. I have my hand on her arm to be sure her balance was okay. She tripped over a small crack in the pavement. And with that crack, the first thing that hit was her head on the concrete. She was out cold. I looked up to the heavens and I said, God, do we need you now? I knelt over. She's 3/4 over on her stomach. She's breathing. Her color's good, and she's totally unresponsive. She was not bleeding, apparently. I looked for a neighbor to call 911. Nobody to be found. My cell phone's in the house. I ran in, got the cell phone, and called 911. For the first 8 minutes after she fell, she was unresponsive. I could hear the ambulance coming. And all of a sudden, she started to moan a little bit. And I said, Annie, can you hear me? Yeah. I said, don't move, whatever you're doing. Are you having any pain? No. You fell and you hit your head. Can you gently move your fingers a little bit? And she moved her fingers. I said, can you gently move your feet? And she could move her fingers or her feet. I said, don't move. And she didn't have any neck pain, so I knew her neck was probably okay. Ambulance took her to the hospital. She had a skull fracture. She had bleeding within her brain. The amazing thing is, by the next day, the amount of blood in her brain had gone down significantly and had stopped bleeding. And we went home, and she recovered quite dramatically. A couple of years later, we were in a hotel sitting, and she was sitting on a poor chair, and she leaned to the side. And the same thing happened. The chair tipped over, her head hit that hard floor. Again, 10 minutes of unconsciousness. We were in Madison, went to university hospitals, and all the imaging was normal. We drove back to Green Bay that day. When that happened, I said, you've fallen for the last time. For the next 5 years, she had one fall. She would have fallen 20 times a day. Her balance was that bad. But she only had one fall. And then in January 2020, again sitting, she leaned to the side and fell and did have a concussion without any significant damage. But we moved onward. And when we least expected it, and I'll try not to spend much time on this, her low back hurt. She was never overweight. She was always physically in good shape. She would develop disabling pain, inability to move, incapacitation, and neurological disability. The first time she had a ruptured disc at the lowest level in her back. She had a dropped foot, needed surgery, and she was bounced back dramatically better. But that disc that she had ruptured ultimately wore out, and she developed severe pain an hour later, or not an hour later, a year later. And she ended up having to have a second surgery. We went through ultimately 5 surgeries. Every operation did exactly what it was supposed to do and worked well for a while. The last operation, she was literally paralyzed from the waist down abruptly. And with the major corrective surgery, which was 11 years ago, her neurological state returned to normal as far as her spine in 4 days. It was a miracle. Did she still have Parkinson's? Yes. And since that time, her back has not been a problem. What did we learn from that? Keep her back stable, work on posture control. And we did not do a lot of twisting activities because all that would do would be to aggravate her back. So we prevented the falling by being by her side, and we'll show you some of the tricks we used. We prevented further back trouble by good posture control. But then she started to choke. And we had swallowing studies, and they said she should never use a straw because she'll aspirate and it'll go down in her lungs. I thought, she can't swallow well. We've got to get nutrition in. And it was either a feeding tube or try smoothies. We went through 3 to 4 years of homemade smoothies, and we taught her brain how to swallow with a good straw so that we maintained her weight without further weight loss. And we needed those smoothies and that nutrition because her brain was starving. Her brain needs the nutrition. Sure, the rest of her body needs it, but her brain is starving. How can we expect her brain to work? So where did all this lead? Well, it led to the loss of independence for her. She needed more assistance. Next. But remember, most, if not all, the problems that arise are not her fault. They're the fault of the disease. And so we're going to tackle the disease. Those of us who don't have Parkinson's disease, but are involved because of being family members or caregivers, have to see and understand the Parkinson's disease through the patient's eyes and not our own. There are answers to the challenges and the obstacles of Parkinson's disease. First and foremost are constant attention and aggressive management of those challenges and obstacles. Yes, you need ongoing experienced neurological care, and you need ongoing as needed from time to time and quite frequently specialty rehabilitative care with excellent physical therapists, with occupational therapists, and with speech therapists. And you need the organizational educational support groups, such as Wisconsin Parkinson's Association, and the healthcare facilities, and Rocksteady Boxing, and programs like that that are fine-tuned. And through the Wisconsin Parkinson's Association, I became aware of something that I had not heard of before. And thank you, Jeremy and your crew, about talking about the Davis Finney Foundation and their publication, Every Victory Counts. And this is amazing. So individualized ongoing caregiving support as needed is often. Next. Oh, wait, go back one. Sorry. Falling is never allowed, never, never. And when there are judgment and cognitive lapses, they must be delicately but effectively overridden. All caregivers, family and friends must be flexible because the disease changes from minute to minute, hour to hour, day by day, and we have to adapt to them. And slowness is there. It's going to be there. So we have to accept that and deal with it. And how do we deal with it? Number one, love and understanding. Build and maintain trust. And then from that, you get the physical and emotional support, and you share the challenges. This is a team approach. Education and guidance, therapy, mental exercise and stimulation, aggressive dietary and nutritional management, appropriate medication, and a good balance of rest and physical activities, and patience so that we can deal with this and other neurological challenges. The activities of daily living are critically important in maintaining our independence and our quality of life. Walking and standing, sitting and standing, sitting down in a chair and getting out of a chair, getting in and out of bed, using the toilet, bathing, dressing, all of which are very important. With Parkinson's disease, some areas of the brain and those connections are permanently not working. But yet many other areas of the brain are relatively normal. And this is where neuroplasticity comes in. We need to maximize the functions of the good areas of the brain and minimize and reverse the abnormal functioning of the bad parts. So we're going to teach the brain how it's going to work, and that's how we apply neuroplasticity. Stress can make all of these things worse. Illness or injury can temporarily be a big problem. Fatigue, if you're tired, you can't exercise as much as you need. And rest and exercise and finding the right balance between the two is critical. So the treatments, yes, neurological care, appropriate medications, and intensive lifestyle. The goals, we want to maximize our overall health and especially our brain's health and function. We want to prevent disease and disability. If we can't prevent it, we want to delay it. If we can't delay it, we want to minimize it. And if we can't minimize it, we keep our efforts going to slow it, to stop it, and reverse it. And if we can't do those things, we adapt to it, accept it, but we challenge the disease and the disability. We can't prevent aging, and we can't prevent many of these other effects of getting older or of diseases. But we want to improve the quality of life so we can enjoy life and help others. Okay, we're going to talk about exercise and show you a quick things. Come on, Nurse Kathy, who is going to help me with these things. First of all, for your home exercise equipment, you only need 3 special things. Number 1, you need chairs with good arms and that are sturdy. And here we are. And you're going to see how we use those. The second thing is you need good counters to stand and support you. A kitchen counter, the bathroom counter, where you can hold on for balance as needed. And the third thing is, if you have stairs, try to have railings on both sides, because if you're able to safely go up and down stairs, you can have a caregiver or somebody with you, and you have 2 railings to hold on to, you can usually maintain some fitness with that. Now we're going to go first of all to walking. Walking is the best aerobic exercise. And with Ann, she got to the point, this is how Ann would walk. She'd lean forward like this, and with a walker, she got to the point, she was like this. We had intensive physical therapy. It did not seem, we could not change that habit. We went home and I said, Ann, we're going to quit using the walker, and I'm going to be your walker. So pretend I'm Ann and Kathy is me, but I'm going to give the directions. Okay. First of all, stand tall, Ann. Second of all, don't lean forward. Third, we're going to take a big step with your left foot and then your right foot. Big steps. Okay. 1, 2, 3, go. Stop. The second you start shuffling, you stop. Now we're going to go back. Now with a number of days of practicing this, okay, stand tall, big step, and make the steps big now, Ann. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. We've got 4 steps today. Now we're going to build on that. And we built on it to the point that we could go the 90 feet from the bedroom to the kitchen table without stopping some days the same way. Now, there were bad days sometimes when she needed more support than that. And what do we do then? Now, Kathy has become Ann. And we'd go face to face then, and I'd walk backwards. So on a count of three, we're going to start with your right foot. 1, 2, 3, go. Good. Okay. So doing that, we ultimately ended up being able to walk a quarter mile around our block. I would put chairs out there, so we would go maybe 30 yards and sit down. We were able to sometimes walk face to face. The neighbors were all used to, and the little kids were used to seeing Grandma Annie, Rolf, and Grandpa Rolf walking like that. It allowed us a quality of life and kept us going. Okay, so that's some tricks on how to walk, how to sit. Oh no, here, stand. Balance exercise, very important exercise. Stand tall, hold on for balance. Falling is never allowed. On a count, then lift this leg up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and down. Do 5 repeats, eventually build up to 10 repeats 3 times a day. Now, what's this do? Number 1, you're holding on for balance so you don't fall. Number 2, you lift this leg up, which is exercising this leg. Number 3, you're standing on this leg, which is supporting the leg. And number 4, this is a balance exercise. Your brain is being taught to balance. So eventually 10 repeats 3 times a day. And the good news is you only have to do it for the next 30 years usually. So, and then the third thing is with a chair. With your chair, you sit down, you want good arms on the chair. When you sit down, then get your feet back underneath. Lean forward, nose in front of toes, and stand up carefully. But when you stand up, sit back down. This is a wonderful exercise to build strength in your major muscles around your hips and your legs. So every time you sit down, stand up 3 to 5 times. Every time you decide you're going to stand up or you're going to sit down, stand up and sit down. Just as part of your life, a wonderful exercise. There are other exercises we can do too, but we don't have time to go into that today. So what are the guidelines? If there's any doubt, have medical clearance with your doctor, with a good physical therapist. Falling is never allowed. When you start doing these exercises, it's a good idea to have somebody with you to make sure you're doing it safely. If any exercise hurts, number 1, don't do it. Or if you just have a little bit of pain, pay attention to the pain. And if it's getting worse, stop. Start gradually and build yourself up slowly. Technique is critically important, and always mix your exercise with enough rest. To summarize, take charge of your life. You need to know yourself. Are you diabetic? Are you overweight? Are you too thin? Do you have high blood pressure? Remember, we are all different, and so are our needs as well. Be appropriately physically active for you and keep moving. Be cognitively active. Use your brain, train it, and stimulate it. Be socially involved and active, including spiritually active as needed. When Anne was losing ground with her Parkinson's disease, she had one day just having terrible time. This was about 2 years ago. And I said, when we went to bed, I snuggled up to her and I said, Annie, it's been a tough day, hasn't it? And she said, yeah. And I said, we're going to make these days better. I said, I'm so frustrated for you too. And so I snuggled up to her and I said, and I never prayed at night when we went to bed out loud. I always did quietly. And I said, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." And with that, she joined me and we said the Lord's Prayer together. And at the end of that, I said, "God, you have blessed us with our wonderful marriage and our loving family." I said, "The disease was really tough on us today. You've always guided us. And you brought us together. You've guided us. Some days we need more help than others." We've prayed every night in the last 2 years until Ann passed away peacefully at home, age 80 and a half, in my arms. And it was special. That spiritual aspect was one of the most treating things that we did. So now we need good nutrition. We need to minimize stress. We need sleep. We need to avoid toxins, and we need to eliminate bad habits. So what did Ann and I achieve in this 44-year journey? Number one, longevity. Reached 80 years. Number two, 56 years of a happy marriage with a high quality of life, seeing our 3 children grow and seeing and having them give us 8 wonderful grandchildren. And so we've had all sorts of wonderful experiences. And most importantly, we were able to maintain Ann with a very strong, vibrant personality and spiritual life. All of this while challenging her Parkinson's and not allowing the nasty disease to define her. Ann's strong legacy lives on to help others. And we are so proud to be able to share this story and open the door to helping people. Chris?
Thank you, Dr. Lulloff, for sharing. So this just here is some information about the Brain Center. If we can help anyone that's in the audience today and participating, this is our contact information. We have a website. We're connected via social media. And we're also kicking off a webinar series, a speaker series to share many other ways that can impact brain health. So check us out on that too. Jeremy, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Dr. Lulloff. We have a few questions, but I will tell the audience, if you have questions, please go to the Q&A function, add any questions in. We will ask those now. For those who don't know me, Chris has talked to me off camera a few times. I'm Jeremy Oddie. I'm the Director of Outreach and Education here at the Wisconsin Parkinson Association. And I'll be doing the Q&A going forward. So I want to touch on a few things that kind of came up as you were talking, Dr. Lulloff. One of the things I want to talk about, you'd mentioned with Ann, she was with a walker and you said, well, we want to get away from the walker. Here's some exercises we can do. Can you maybe talk to the audience a little bit that this wasn't just you decided this, you probably worked with the doctor, did some exercises and worked your way up. It wasn't like she showed up and you hid the walker and had her just start, right?
Right. We had been through an intensive physical therapy program, and I knew the physical therapist from my professional experiences, and they were frustrated that they were not able to see her movement pattern, her shuffling, her leaning forward, respond. And I said, well, we're going to work on that at home. And we worked at it at home, and we couldn't make a difference with it with the walker. And therefore, I said, let's try doing it with me being the walker. Now, that means preventing falls and changing her movement pattern so that she was concentrating on standing taller. And when we would walk face to face and I'd walk backwards, she was tall because I was supporting her under her arms. So now you could say, well, does that make her independent? Well, there's nothing that's going to make her safely independent at that stage. And, you know, for those of you in the audience that have Parkinson's disease and you say, oh, this is depressing. Well, you got to remember, she had this disease for 44 years. And we had high quality of life we traveled in Europe when she was 70. It was a challenge, but we did. And we were in our own home. And people say, well, yeah, but you're a doctor, you understand these things. Some of the best caregivers have had no medical degree whatsoever. They pay attention. And this is just opening the door of, hey, we're all different. What works for Ann may not necessarily work for most people, but you have to get to know the patient, the person, the patient, the caregiver.
Well, and I think you just made a big point there, Dr. Lulloff. You were a caregiver. You were a doctor for a number of years, and all of a sudden your spouse has a disease where you become a care partner and you're working with her. Can you talk from the professional side what you see the role of the care partner and how you maybe took that into being the care partner with Ann once the disease progressed to a point where you had to be more hands-on in certain ways?
That's absolutely true. You know, what I did for her, I didn't do enough for her 15 years ago. If I had known, we would have been doing a lot more exercise, but she was fairly functional then. And she hadn't, 20 years ago, she hadn't started to fall yet. So don't wait until you fall to start preventing it. Start preventing it by being physically active. And you know, your emphasis on physical activities is critically important. My message is just to say there are individual differences, and that's how you have to figure out what's appropriate at that time for that wonderful person who is afflicted.
Yep. Well, I think you hit it really right on the head. Is everybody is different. I think you said that earlier on. Is what works for Ann may not work for your next door neighbor, may not work for the next person. So it is knowing the person, knowing the individual, and knowing what they like. I mean, I'm sure you hear it from your perspective at the Brain Center, but I know in the time I've been with WPA, I'll get people who call and say, well, I need my husband to get more active, you know, because of the Parkinson disease, he just sits around, he doesn't do anything, he watches TV 24/7. And I always say, well, what did he love to do before Parkinson disease? And they said, well, he loved to sit around, watch TV and not do anything. So once you're diagnosed with a chronic condition, it's not magically going to make you want to do things that you didn't do beforehand. So finding out what maybe his niche maybe is very important. I think you really touched on that everybody is individualized.
Yes. You know, you take advantage of nature. Hey, let's get out and get some fresh air. Let's find a way to walk down the street and see the neighborhood kids. And what are you getting out of it? Well, you're getting a social event, but you're also getting some exercise.
Well, let's be honest, in Wisconsin, we have a very limited window that you can get out and do that, so we should do it when we can, right? It's much harder to do in December, January, and February than it is today.
But you know what we did then? We had a new step machine, and Ann got on there, and we walked, we made loops in the house, we did all those sort of things.
Well, I'm going to jump back. You had mentioned neuroplasticity during your presentation and the importance of neuroplasticity and exercise. Can you maybe explain it a little better or a little more for people so they fully understand what neuroplasticity is and why it's really important, especially as you know the brain ages and Parkinson progresses?
Neuroplasticity, if you want to know what changes in the brain, the stimulation to the brain, like physical exercise, helps stimulates brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which stimulates new brain cells to form. And it stimulates new connections between brain cells that help fight the disease, help move better, help exercise better, help think better. So the physical exercise is like a pill to make the brain better, and that's neuroplasticity. So new cells, new connections, and waking up cells that are sort of asleep or dormant, and connections between cells. The connections, the pathways between parts of the brain are working better. And you can see that. And now imaging studies will show that parts of the brain grow because the person was exercising.
Thank you. I think that probably explains it very well to people. I'm going to direct a question to Chris now. Chris, we talked a little bit about what the Brain Center does. We spent a lot of time obviously talking about Parkinson's disease, but we know Parkinson's disease usually hits people 60 and older. So a lot of the people joining us are Parkinson's disease, but are also care partners who are maybe over 60. If I reach out to the Brain Center, what are some of the things you can do for those who don't, not just those with Parkinson's, but maybe all those? What would I expect if I called you to learn a little more about brain health?
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Really our programs and our services are twofold. We have the personal coaching, which all of our volunteer coaches either have a medical degree, retired, or we have one registered nurse retired, who you met Kathy on the screen. So we really work with individuals, their caregiver, their family unit, to kind of coach them through some of these challenges. All of our coaches have had personal experiences, so they can connect with them, they can relate, they've lived it. So we're talking about the diet, the exercise, the sleep, the stress management, the positive social circles, all those things would be part of those coaching sessions. Again, we're a nonprofit, so all of our programs and services are free of charge. The other part of it is really educating across generations. So we want all people at 20, 30, 40, 50 to know what they can be doing as far as fuel to their brain, exercise that impacts their brain, again, the sleep, that really helps them with that general brain health, because there's so much more we can all be doing to impact our brains and that cognitive function. And we can be doing that through our whole lives to prevent some of that disease from impacting us at later stages, from delaying it. And just, getting up in the morning and feeling good and feeling like your brain is working at an optimal level. Employers would appreciate that. Schools would appreciate that. So we're also working with those organizations locally in our community to help people understand what are those things that impact my brain, because it's automatic. There's so many things that just happen. So what can we proactively do to do some of that prevention and decrease some of that incidence rate that we're seeing more and more people being impacted by brain disease and conditions?
Thank you. I think that's a great overview. I'm going to ask you maybe a loaded question. I read crossword puzzles, Sudoku, all those things are great for brain health. And I know they are, but are there, if you're going to give everybody listening to 2 or 3 quick tips or tricks they can do to really start getting that brain going, what are some of the things you would recommend? And I know, I'm going to talk to, Dr. Lulloff, the exercise and being social, a lot of stuff we missed with COVID. Those are huge. But what are maybe a couple of the other things you would, give a little nugget for somebody listening?
Well, all of these things are important, and you want to take care of all of them if you can. Now, does that mean it's going to be a busy time, making sure you exercise, yet you sleep, you do the crossword puzzle and things like that? All of these things are stimulating the brain. And even sleeping at night clears the cobwebs out of your brain. It nutritionally gets the poisons out, and your brain is ready for another day. So these things can be very, very positive. And what do I do when I get up in the morning? Hey, I'm 79. I do my exercises, and I'm outlining the exercises for me that Ann taught me. And that wakes up my brain to start thinking. And then I read a lot, and I find it exciting. And the scientific evidence shows that the Sudokus and crossword puzzles can challenge and can help. And Ann and I played games when we did our exercises to wake up her voice, and we do the alphabet. And we'd go, I'd say A, she'd say B, we'd go to the end, and I said, let's do it backwards. It took us about a week, and we could say the alphabet backwards. And we played numbers games. 100, okay, go down from 100 by sevens. 193, 86, 79, those sort of games. Now, you could say, well, that's just sort of a gimmick. Hey, it's making your brain work. So
I would say that new learning, challenging yourself to learn something you don't know much about, whether it be gardening or swimming or whatever it is. Those are some things that we find clients share that are very helpful for them, as well as the arts and music, and utilizing those things to stimulate your brain and bring back some of those memories and things that we struggle with as we grow older. So the arts are also an important thing.
I appreciate it. I think those are all great tips people can do. I've heard many a times it's a muscle. If you don't use it, you are going to lose it. So the more you can do to challenge yourself, and from anything, I love the count backwards from 100 by sevens. As soon as you did it, in my head, I'm trying to do it, and I got to about 79, and then I had to stop and start thinking. So I'm with you. It's a good one. Well, I'm going to wrap. I'm going to bring Gary on to do the conclusion. I really want to thank both of you for joining us. You have a couple of handouts that we will send along to people as an attachment with the evaluation that will go out today. So please look for that as the participants. So thank you both. With that, I'm going to step stage left, and Gary's going to take over. Thank you both.
Thank you,
thank
Jeremy.
you very much.
Yeah, I definitely want to echo that as well. Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you, Dr. Lulloff. It's great to have you as new friends and new partners in our work together to serve this fantastic community. Appreciate that. I also want to say thanks to Jeremy and Carolyn, all our staff, but Jeremy and Carolyn. I stand here and all of a sudden, boom, we got a beautiful 1 hour presentation, runs really smoothly, simply. There's a lot of work to do in that. I just want everyone out there to know we have a great staff working hard on your behalf. So thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Carolyn. Couple of things I just want folks in the audience to know. Today's program, all three of the programs, the recordings will be on that day, later that day. We're going to have this one up, the recording of it on our website later this afternoon, wiparkinson.org. wiparkinson.org is our website. You're also going to receive today in your email an evaluation. We do this with all our programs, sort of get your feedback on how the program went, other ideas you might have for topics. We're proud of that. We're very driven by what the Parkinson community wants to see in these programs. So please take the short time. It's not long. Take the time to fill that out. Also want to encourage you to join us for the next two programs. Next Thursday will be what you heard a lot about today, exercise, right? Comprehensive exercise for Parkinson's. So get to live it out, get to do your exercises in the privacy of your home. We'll have Patrick Barron joining us, a great physical therapist who does some fun work, and you'll enjoy that. So join us. The link you had signed up with today, same link for all programs. So make it simple. You'll get another email or two on this, but the same link you use today will be good for those. One, save the date. I'm going to ask you to put on your calendar July 30th, Friday. If you're in the area where we are, we're Brookfield, in the Brookfield Conference Center. We're going to hold our annual symposium. Again, that's July 30th. And we expect to have space to hold that in person. We're also going to have a virtual component to that if you can't make it, or if you're still feeling unsafe, which is understandable, but put that on your calendar. We hope to see you in person for our first in-person program. And then the last thing we always end with is, as Christy mentioned, they're a nonprofit, we're a nonprofit. We rely 100%. These programs are free. We love giving them free to all of you, but they do cost money to run. We rely 100% on your giving, and I know many of you already give. I know this is not a good time for many to give, and that's fine as well. But if you're in a situation where you haven't had the chance to support us in that way, we'd love you to consider it in your evaluation. Today we'll have a donate button as well. That's it from our end. Hope you have a great rest of your afternoon, and we hope to see you for the next two Thursdays. Thanks for joining us.